everyone. This is In Depth, and I'm Elaine Ayala, your host for this show. Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, celebrations have grown steadily in San Antonio, especially over the last decade. So much so that San Antonio is now seen as a travel destination during those days surrounding November 2nd and 1st, when those holidays are primarily recognized. There's lots to celebrate about that growth and a lot to think about as this old town embarks on several weeks and weekends of remembering their loved ones and celebrating this rich tradition. Our guest today is the remarkable Ellen Riojas Clark, professor emerita at the University of Texas at San Antonio. She has been an integral part of UTSA since it opened in 1973. That was a very good year, 1973. Recently, UTSA's College of Education and Human Development endowed a chair in bicultural bilingual studies in her honor. It's the first chair established in honor of a Latina in academics in the United States. I feel we should click on and do some fake applause, as a soundtrack.
Even if it's just me.
She's also the recipient of 3 National Endowment for the Humanities grants and served as a cultural director for the PBS program Maya and Miguel. She has written several books, including Multicultural Literature for Latino Children, Don Moisés Espino de Castillo y sus Calaveras, and still the forthcoming, Pan Dulce, a compendium of Mexican patriots. I can't wait to see that one. Who's publishing that, Ellen?
Trinity Press.
Okay.
2023, next year. Yeah.
Okay. Congratulations, Ellen, and welcome to In Depth.
Thank you so much.
It's nice to see you here. We've got to do a lot of reflection on Dia de los Muertos today, as it's celebrated here and celebrated elsewhere. So my first question is really a very basic one, Ellen, and that's to tell us about the origins of Dia de los Muertos and how they've come to be passed down to all of us partygoers and dresser-uppers in San Antonio.
Well, I think the history of it is most interesting because there's been a long debate in Mexico among scholars regarding the beginnings or the where of Dia de Muertos began. So there's what you can document is it's related, yes, to Europe and to the medieval places, so forth, but it has a strong basis or framework with our indigenous history of the Americas. And that's the point of conflict. So people think, no, it's not based on an indigenous custom, but anthropologists have really looked at this and found out, of course, there's many similarities. And it makes sense. Makes sense, right, Elaine? That when people die, we don't forget them. And we remember them for 1 or 2 years. So that's a long, long history of death and living. I remember being in grad school and reading some Aztec poetry. And the line that struck me deeply was, when you're alive, you're really dreaming. And when you die, it's when you wake up. Isn't that just...
Oh my God, I just got chills.
Isn't that amazing
yes.
line? And I think that is a line that brought me to looking into Dia de Muertos. And by the way, we say Dia de los Muertos, it's accepted. That's a literal translation, but it's really Dia de Muertos. And it brought me into, what is this? I'm not Catholic, so we've never celebrated All Saints' Day or All Souls' Day, because that's a religious connection to Roman Catholicism, and of course to the history of across the ocean. And among the indigenous groups, coming to find out that they celebrated like 6 days during the year where they celebrated people or death. I think that's amazing that they didn't forget this. And so among those dates was November the 6th. Of course, we celebrate el día 2 y el día 3 de noviembre. But it's a very rich history. And for those of you who really want to explore it, I would get into really reading about the connections between it. So what does it mean now? Well, it goes down through history in Mexico. And then, I don't know if you remember, but at one time, there was this huge separation entre la iglesia y el gobierno en Mexico. Big celebration.
Secular and all things religious.
Exactly. And
even more so than U.S. government.
Oh, yes.
Separation of church and state were very vivid in Mexico.
It went underground. You saw no one dressed in habits and so forth. And then, just like the United States, anytime there's a change in government, somebody comes in to do something a little different. And that's what happened, that who knows who, Cárdenas or what president kind of brought it back. But I think the major figure that I gave voice or sight to it was José Posada. You've heard of José Posada?
Of course. Tell us about him and why he's remembered and his work is remembered during these days too.
Because he's the first one that drew it. He drew it. And did he have political intentions behind it? I think so. I think he was making a comment because he dressed up like Catrina, a calavera like a Catrina. In other words, she was wearing gloves, a hat.
Black and white.
Black and white.
And face
makeup,
paint.
Yes. And dresses. So that was his comment, I think, about the Europeans. And then the other was pulling everything off that human body, y era el esqueleto que quedaba, where we're all the same, Elaine.
We're all the same when you get down to the bones.
When you get down to the bones. Now, taller bones than me and you, but yes, we're all the same. We have this very same skeletal makeup of bones. So I thought it was amazing that everybody that Posada then drew were skeletons, but dressed up.
Yes.
And he dressed them in many forms, like the Europeans, but also dressed them just like laborers.
Everyday people in Mexico.
Everyday people. La gente haciendo comida.
Músicos, mariachis, bodas. It's remarkable how that visualization of Muertos became popularized in everything. And now, of course, if you look at my necklace, it has a skull, the decorative skull, my earrings. It has become part and parcel of our celebration and embraced by people who have no idea of the history. And that's in part why we're talking, because there's a lot of moving parts to Dia de Muertos. And thank you for correcting us, even though it's going to take a while before Chicanos and the rest of America refers to Day of the Dead as Dia de Muertos, because it's more correct.
Well, it's accepted. Language is alive, so it doesn't matter.
It keeps changing. Yeah. So there's so many characteristics of Day of the Dead, from the building of an altar, remembering our loved ones who come back to visit us because we place special things of remembrance on that altar. There's everything from the Catholic remembrances at masses that many Catholics and some non-Catholics also embrace, to the what has happened now in San Antonio, that we have calaveras donde quiera. We have a river parade dedicated to Day of the Dead. We have, Los Lobos are coming into town for wonderful? A concert. And okay, who opens for them? Flaco Jimenez Jr. I mean, you cannot get more Chicano royalty. By the way, I wanted to tell viewers too, I'm sitting across Chicano royalty today. And I want to make that clear that we are blessed in San Antonio with so many major figures in so many fields, in academia, in business, in leadership, in music, that's what makes us so rich. And I think that's why San Antonio has become a destination for Dia de Muertos. So try to talk about all the different moving parts, from the wonderful poems that come out of Day of the Dead. Esperanza Peace and Justice Center is a major figure there, to the wearing of calaveras, to the beautiful figures that come out of Mexico City and brought here for this parade. All of those different, the altares that are
there are many
favorite.
different moving parts. But I think if we look beyond just what's really visible in our community and go down to the basic part of our cemeteries, just like in Mexico, you go to the cemetery here in San Antonio, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, they're all over the country. The people that first generation recent arrivals, maybe even second generation, they go to the cemeteries to place flowers on the graves of their departed ones. I hate to say that I've never been to the cemetery to visit where my mom and my dad and my grandparents are. I never have done that. It was not part of my custom.
Your custom, your religious, your faith custom.
Well, even just the dead custom.
Okay.
that to go visit. And what you see to me is the real thing, down on Couples Road, is you see people cleaning the graves, putting flowers on them, and spending the day there.
Yes.
And telling stories. So that's the basic framework to telling the stories about who has departed. And in those telling the stories, Elaine, they're remembering all the names. Yes. And another Aztec thing that I remember too is that they would say, as long as you can say the name of a person or a concept, it has not died.
Oh, yes.
Has not died.
How beautiful.
So we really want to do that. And so what has come to mean then is that people going down Couples saw the beautiful things that were being built and the outdoor altares that, as a very artistic and culturally rich city, we have moved it out into the public space. So now in the public space, we are teaching people about the rituals, the cultural rituals, the religious rituals that make the identity of San Antonio what it is. Because, Elaine, San Antonio is Mexican-American. There's no other thing than Mexican-American. Are we multicultural? To a little point, but we're heavily Mexican-American. That is a culture that permeates because it's our history and it is all our missions.
It's in the land. It's underneath the land. In those
exactly.
I live on the west side, and I live right near San Fernando number 2, at the corner of Castorville and Couples Road, and I grew up. In my family, we always visited our graves at this time. We also visited multiple times a year, because if it was somebody's birthday or the anniversary of their death or something, or it was somebody else's anniversary, so we made the rounds and everybody got flowers. So everybody got flowers several times a year. And the beautiful marigold flowers would be the smell is so distinct and it permeates the whole neighborhood.
Correct.
And when you drive by, it's almost like, if you don't know, what is happening? Is there a festival going on because of all the flowers? And I have seen the very elaborate display for Dia De Muertos. And I've seen the simple, so touchy tin can of beer.
The tin can with the flowers.
Right.
And also this brings us back then to what are the altares? What are the ofrendas? And that does have an indigenous background.
Mm-hmm. Because the flower is an indigenous flower.
Yes, but the whole makeup of an altar, because it has a rhythm to it. It has to have so many stages on it.
Levels.
Yeah, different levels. And those do come from our indigenous background. Mm-hmm. So to create altares, usually they're at home. And you just do them on a dresser top, or you do an elaborate one. And I think, to me, that is the most beautiful thing
Yes,
that
I
has
agree.
happened as a result of this coming out into public space. That has come out into public space and it's gone back into the private space of
As
the home.
well.
Because just about everybody I know monta un altar in their home and puts up the flowers, which are the samachuli, the marigolds, because the smell is so strong, and it's said it smells like death, and it's also to guide the spirits
souls
in.
back.
So what is an altar for? It is to honor the people that passed on, but it's also to welcome them back that night, 2 days that you can live with them. So how do you bring them back? Un vaso de agua.
They've had a long
salt.
journey, and they need to be refreshed.
Some salt, and then you have to, of course, la comida, their favorite foods. Tamales is a very, very popular thing to have, but you have mole, enchiladas, a hamburger, whatever.
Pan dulce.
Yeah, pan dulce, whatever it is that you do. And, you mentioned the book that I'm writing on pan dulce, and there is a pan that I found the name for, but please don't ask me the name because I can't pronounce it. It's in Nahuatl, that was made way back when and has been revived to now. It's a bread that's kind of purple in color, and the indigenous groups used to put it on the altars. So now we're going to bring that to light so that we can put it on the altar along with the salt, along with the water, the candles, the pathway to guide them in. And I think, again, I keep saying the most important part, but I think the real part for families and for a city is to remember our forefathers and mothers who went on before us and to say the names of everybody. So to go around the group, and so the little ones can pick up, what's your grandmother's name, your great-grandmother's name? Do you remember this is a new one, etc.? Your tío this and your tía that.
Yes.
Whether you do it in English, Chinese, or whatever language. And most cultural groups honor their dead, but we honor them in a different way, in a festive way, because we dress up our skeletons like they're going to a gala, and we put mariachi hats on them. We bring music. So it's a very lively way to, I think, bring it to life. And I think that's what the movies have done. The movies like Coco have done that so beautifully.
They're so beautifully.
To do that.
And I agree that that an altar is the most intimate form of recognizing Day of the Dead. And so much so that now you can go into any H-E-B, to so many stores, and you can find items that reflect that culture and that holiday. And it's been beautiful to see. But at the same time, I wonder if you'll talk about, maybe, I don't know if we call these do's and don'ts, or what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, that have caught your attention and that you hope people will follow and respect.
Well, I think the major thing is to celebrate it, and to celebrate it with knowledge. So that's our duty, to read about it and to learn how to montar an altar in a respectful way. Because remember, we're not making fun. We are respecting the people that went on beyond us. So we have to respect who they were without knowing who they were, because sometimes it could be multiple generations. But I think that if the stories we tell are the stories as true as we can remember, it's great. If you do it with poking fun, that is not respect. That's being disrespectful of whoever. And so mainly that's probably the biggest don't.
Yeah.
The other is that we buy pan de muertos, and yes, you can eat it. Because people say, can we eat it? Absolutely. Because good pan de muerto is, like Mrs. Bedoy says, is made con respeto y con amor.
That's
and
right.
with a little bit of orange juice to make it right. And so what are the round things, the little round original pan de muertos, what does it symbolize? Well, the four bones on the top. And do you know what the little knob is on top?
No, I know about the bones on top, but
The
I
bones
don't.
of the, yeah.
What is the knob?
The
member?
little knob on the top is a brain. It's the head. So people that know about that it's a head, well, can I pop it off and eat it? Yes, con respeto. And you're ingesting.
It's also so good.
So good.
Oh my God.
Well, they just made one in effigy for me.
Oh my goodness.
Yes, a big pan de muerto like this.
And it does look like you. It has your hair.
It has big glasses, but my hair is not as big. But they made it before, and the panadero says everybody comes in and wants to order your pan, and I said, well, the don't there is you don't make a pan de muertos for somebody who's alive.
So yes. It's very sweet. The intention is very sweet.
But it's okay. They make them in spurs. They make them. You can order it the way you want now. It doesn't matter. But again, so that might be,
on the edge. Yes,
side.
It's playful.
And the other is you've seen the little sugar skulls, right? And so the little sugar skulls, you buy hundreds of those all over. Mm-hmm. You can put them up, and they have a little foil band on the top for people to write the name on.
Oh.
So who do you write it for? Somebody who's dead or somebody who's alive?
You write it for someone who is gone.
Well, that's the only do you can do. If you love somebody, you can put your loved one's name on it, whether died or alive. And you can flirt with it because you can give somebody.
How about somebody I wish was already gone?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. You can flirt with it. So I guess do's and don'ts, there's not many other than just be respectful for whoever. The parade is fabulous.
It's beautiful.
The parade is going to be fabulous. It's going to call attention to San Antonio. But what I really want people who watch the TV portion of the parade learn the history.
Yes.
Because the other thing they've got to know that our Chamber of Commerce and our visitors bureaus needs to really promote is that the cultural identity of San Antonio is Mexican-American. And we should be proud of that.
Embrace it fully. History and all. Fully.
It has deep roots into this land, like you said, deep roots all the way to the Americas. I mean, it's incredible.
In our archaeology.
Yep.
20,000 years of Native American. And when I say Native American, what is the largest Native American group in the United States? It's Mexican American.
Yep. So here we are.
Here we are.
So that's San Antonio should promote itself in that way.
Yes.
So I think you pick names for parades that are, reflective of that. But I think Dia de Muertos is a great opportunity to share family stories, to learn family history, to laugh and to cry and to sing and to eat good tamales. Can you imagine that we are bringing the food out? That my altar will have a lemon pie because that was my dad's favorite one.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
Can
beautiful.
I tell you a funny? Well, not a funny. My granddaughter's getting married in St. Louis.
Congratulations.
Thank you, this week. And she is Mexican-American, Scottish, and she's marrying Gabe, who is Jewish. And she wants me to go montar an altar at the reception.
How beautiful is that?
Have you ever seen an altar de muertos?
Well, let me tell you
that at a wedding reception?
It wasn't quite the same, but when my goddaughter, Elenita, got married, she was missing so many people that she had hoped one day would be there with us.
Yeah.
It was her grandmother, it was her padrino, my brother, and my mother, and other people who weren't able to be with us, perhaps only in spirit. So at a little table, it wasn't an altar, but she put all their pictures out to show. But an altar at a wedding is a fabulous idea to include them.
Well, you should see it because I'm taking it all in my suitcases. I made it. It's going to be elegant, but it's going to be very, very respectful to the idea of all our family that's gone. So I think it's a neat thing to introduce St. Louis Missouri to the altares that we
But
honor.
now that you mentioned St. Louis, one of the things I found out in doing several historical pieces over time is that St. Louis was very important to the Mexican and Mexican American community, the exiles and the citizens, because St. Louis was the very first place that a Mexican consulate was established.
Right.
Very fascinating to me. Okay. So many events, from art exhibits to the Esperanza's written poems and reflections that also poke fun at those that are still with us that they imagine now gone. There's a lot of things to know. And I wonder if we should just talk about a few more, like those poems that are written as if someone has already left us. What are those called?
Those are called calaveras. So it's the same thing as a skeleton. And it's a custom that, of course, started when Posada in Mexico, that people then wrote these little limericks to go along with Posada's art pieces or lithographs, and became a custom in Mexico to write, like, as you said, they're short little puns, that rhymes and that take a notable figure and poke fun at them. And again, remember, it's poking fun at death, not in an evil way, but we just make fun of ourselves. And the custom then is all through Mexico. And we were fortunate in San Antonio, my book that took 5 years to do all the research on, there's a man in Saltillo, Mexico, that comes, he's also Methodist, that is...
Yay, Methodists.
Moises Espino del Castillo. And he grows up from a very literary family. And so they started writing the calaveras. He comes to San Antonio, and I think it was the Express News or the Light, I'm not sure now. One of the newspapers, y'all had a Mexican, and he was a Mexican columnist here, whose name just went out of my head.
What year are we talking,
We're
Ellen?
talking about 50s.
Wow.
25 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he would write about...
Ellen, that's not 25 years ago. That's more than 50 years ago.
More than 50 years.
But who's counting, Ellen? That's okay.
Who's counting? 50 years ago. You're right, because he wrote it for 25 years. And so this guy asked him, can you write any calaveras to celebrate the Dia? This man wrote in Spanish in the newspaper.
Wow.
I'll give you the name.
Yeah.
Because I thought that was very unusual. But remember, it was a time when the Munguias came, and so there was a lot of interest.
Which is the family of Henry Cisneros.
Yeah, in San Antonio about the Mexican culture.
Yes.
Long story short, Moises Espino del Castillo started writing these poetries. And just like in Mexico, he'd make these brochures, and he'd sell advertising space in the little magazine to pay for the magazine. And then, of course, he would write a calavera in honor of whoever owned it. So he made calaveras internationally, nationally, statewide, and then local in San Antonio. And he would pick living people and really poke fun at them by making the calaveras, writing the calaveras about him. And they were short. He developed his own little rhythm for them, and did it for 25 years, which I thought was admirable to have done a custom.
Yes.
Then Esperanza Peace and Justice picked it up and did it. But you don't write, like you said, you write about the living as if they were dead.
As if they were dead. And you were honoring them, and you poke a little fun at them. So
he would do it for me and mine, because I would travel a lot, and he always would say that I'd come crashing down in an airplane.
Oh my God,
that's
we're coming to the end of this broadcast, and I want to thank you for joining us. I want to mention one very simple altar that I saw many years ago, and it just hit me so deeply, because it was so simple and a little bit of satire in it. So I was walking through the cemetery where so many of my loved ones are buried at San Fernando number 2. And I walked by a stone, and it was a man who lived in San Antonio and died in the 50s or 60s. And some friend remembered him and came by and left him a beer.
Oh.
And it was Day of the Dead. And I thought, he remembers his friend, or she remembers his friend, and remembered that he liked Lone Star beer and left him that as a remembrance. And in San Antonio, in parts of the United States, and definitely through Mexico, similar remembrances would be left. And I want you to just close with something that you remember from in all your travel here in San Antonio, anything that stays in your mind as a poignant tribute to the dead.
Remember having gone to Mexico a lot during Dia de Muertos, being in Oaxaca about right before the pandemic, and going through all of the cemeteries. And at that time, my husband could travel, and he was tired, and he sat down at a bench right in front of a grave. You know how they put those
so
concrete
you can
benches?
Sit there. Uh-huh.
So we sat there, and the grave was kind of dirty, and some people were cleaning the graves around them. And a lady comes up, and she said, "Oh, I'm so glad to see you. We haven't seen anybody from this family in so long. Ay, qué bueno que están aquí. And can we help you clean the grave?" And I was heartbroken to tell them we were just resting. But I thought how beautiful that they looked for each other to come and celebrate. So we ended up cleaning the grave of somebody that I have no idea who it was. And we sat there and had not a Lone Star beer, but I had a limonada and un taco, listening to the mariachis.
Wow.
And it was beautiful.
That's even more poignant. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ellen. I hope everybody finds a way to remember their loved ones on Day of the Dead, on other days, because they are still with us.
Yeah. Oh, that was nice.